You are listening to Fantha Tracks.
Because of the following special program, Wonder Woman and the Incredible Hulk will not be presented this evening.
It's time to get all your Star Wars news in a single file. This is Making Tracks. Here are your hosts, Mark Newbold and Mark Mulcaster.
It's not true. That's impossible.
You're listening to Making Tracks and a very special episode recorded recently at Farthest From 23 down in Fordingbridge in the New Forest, where myself and Fantha Tracks contributor Jonathan Hipkiss discussed the latest news from the Star Wars galaxy, what's been on Disney+, what's coming, what's happened. So here's myself and Jonathan looking back at 2022. We are today, it's 2022, still unbelievably, December, going to talk, I think, about this year's Star Wars releases, the stuff we've got, loads of stuff on television. Nothing on film, sadly, but you know we'll get there one day.
I'm after this year, I'm ready for Star Wars to come back to the cinema. I don't know about you.
I'm totally ready. Why do you think there's been this massive gap? Because you know, Star Wars always prospered coming out every 3 years. It's the circus coming to town, isn't it?
Yeah.
And when we had it every 2 years, it did feel too quick. You never really got a chance to monopolise on it in the best sense. Do you think that was a mistake? Does it feel like they rushed those sequel trilogy films out?
Yeah, I mean, it's so difficult, isn't it? Because times have changed since the prequels.
Oh,
you've got this avalanche of streaming content, and you've got to keep up and keep going. So I do think that, but I think they've slightly admitted that it was too much too soon.
Yeah.
So a break was good while they take stock and have a rethink. But my concern is not to be pessimistic too early. Decisions should have been made by now, and we should be locked and ready.
Yeah.
But I don't think. I mean, I get a bit technical here, but the Disney acquisition of Fox didn't help because now they've got all this plethora to go with.
Yeah.
So Star Wars has kind of been pushed back a bit too much. But I am ready now.
It's weird though, isn't it? That it's already, and I can't believe it's. I think next week 3 years since Rise of Skywalker came out. I know. Which kind of came and went in a heartbeat because we'd got Mando happening, and that was the big zeitgeist moment, you know, and the ninth and final episode of the Skywalker saga kind of got lost in the mix. But yet, for the previous films, you knew on the horizon that the next film was coming. You know, there was something lined up through the gate, and at the moment, there's nothing lined up in the chamber, is there?
Yes, so there's an odd void, isn't there? Because we don't. So I get really excited about television, but the trouble with TV is that you move on so quick.
Yeah.
So there's no time to relax and enjoy. When you think about cinema, it has to be an event.
Yeah.
Because you have to physically go, you have to make the effort. Whereas, and it's films play for 7 weeks typically, 7 or 8
Give or
weeks,
take,
depending.
Especially on Disney Plus when they want to get it on in 50 days.
So I don't know what, there's rumours, isn't there?
Yeah.
But and the trouble is, I think there's a little bit of fear, because now they've built up, whatever's next has got to be a home run 10 out of 10.
Massively.
And
because we talked about it yesterday at the show here in Fordingbridge. You know, you had Kathleen Kennedy announces, not just Kathleen Kennedy, she's just the mouthpiece that says, yes, let's do this. And it's a whole team of people making it. It's unfair to just pick on her. But she would say, oh, here's the teaser trailer for Rogue Squadron, let's say, or Taika Waititi's making a Star Wars adventure, and all these things get mentioned and named, and now, of course, we know Rogue Squadron, if it hasn't been completely wiped from the slate, it's pushed right to the back of the queue. The Taika thing's gone very quiet, but we kind of think that's happening, but not much word on that. Other things, there's been a couple of things in the last couple of weeks, whispers of things happening. It all seems to be a long way off.
It does. I've got to until it's filming, I don't I don't take too much stock now. Let's wait and see, because it started to get a little bit I'm not going to get excited about this, because I got friends of mine who were Rogue Squadron was going. They loved the books, and they're heartbroken and it's not going to happen.
But don't you think Road Squad, picking on that for a second, don't you think that would work way better as a TV show than a film?
Well, this is the trouble now, is what do you do as a film and as a TV show?
Yeah.
Is because, TV is generally cheaper. There's less of a financial impact, less of a risk.
Yeah.
So is it not easier to go down the road of, well, we'll just TV all this?
Yeah.
But no, you don't want it, because Star Wars has to be special.
Yeah.
It has to keep that specialness, and I don't want it to get lost.
And also, you had years and years, I'm going to mention Star Trek, you had years and years of Trek was a TV show in the 60s and an animated show in the 70s, and then it was a motion picture series in the 80s into the 90s, and the next gen had come along and it became the big TV show again, and then you had a golden age of Trek on television, and then it went away after Enterprise, and then JJ comes back with the Kelvin-verse movies, and now on television, Trek's just ridiculously successful. So Trek is in a nice position in that it's as much a movie series now as a TV show, even though at its heart it's
That's
a TV
true,
show.
yeah. I hadn't thought about that.
Yeah. Whereas Star Wars right now, you can't say Star Wars is anything other than a TV. Right now in 2022, it's nothing other than a television franchise at the moment, because there's no films on the horizon.
That's true.
They'll come. Of course they'll come. There's too much money at stake to not do it. But at the moment, it's a TV enterprise, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. But it's been a good year for TV.
It's been a very good year for TV. I mean, we kicked off with Book of Boba Fett, which...
It got in just under the wire. That made me laugh. It was coming 2021, and what was it, December the 29th?
Something like that.
Yeah, I quite like that. They got it in.
What did you make of that show? Because it's divided opinion, and I think divided opinion in both quality of what we saw on the screen and in quality of the storytelling. Where did you sit with that?
It was such a show of two halves. It's almost impossible to judge it as one complete package of 7 episodes of one show. It was almost... The stuff that really worked well, Boba with the Tuscans. Yeah, it was really good storytelling, and it was nice to see that different take of the character. But then it was so odd; it was almost as if there was no consistency. Then you get the Vespers, and that gang, and that left me a bit disappointed. Yeah, and then so it was fine. But then Mando comes in.
Exactly.
And it's absolutely phenomenal. Those 2 episodes, and then you've got Luke with training Grogu, which was just gorgeous. Yeah. I was watching it, jaw dropped. Yeah. And then, of course, the finale where it all... So I don't... really hard to call it.
I've got to say, I'd love to, and I don't think we'll get it for a long time, but I'd love to know. I'd love there to be a behind-the-scenes making-of book of Season 1 of Book of Boba, and find out whether or not when they plotted it, planned it and laid it all out, those 2 episodes were always intended to be in there, because they're so incongruous to the rest of the show.
Yeah, it's true. Because it boggled my brain.
Oh, massively.
Because it completely came... A theory I had, a complete theory I haven't, it was that maybe John and Dave were told, look, we've had this Boba Fett knocking about for a while. Yeah. Can you do something with it, please? And because it was almost because I love The Mandalorian. It's a phenomenon for a reason. It literally brought Star Wars back off life support, is what I say. Sure. But the energy when Mando came in episode 5, you could feel the passion, the love, and whereas with the Boba Fett, it was almost as if.
And it's tricky as well, because I think they were boxed into a corner in the sense that clearly, and this conversation has been had downstairs in Farthest From with various folks, that if they'd have made a Boba Fett project in, let's say, if the Josh Trank Boba Fett project had have happened, it would have been far more like The Mandalorian than the Book of Boba Fett, and that all the classic elements of what we consider to be Boba Fett are essentially The Mandalorian.
Absolutely.
And they've added the lone wolf and cub element and added that father-son aspect to it to give it a twist. Yeah. But basically, Mandalorian is what you would have expected 10 years ago a Boba Fett project to be. And so they've got to pivot to make Boba Fett something else. And somebody very astutely, it might have been you, but somebody very astutely said, well, actually, the Boba in Book of Boba Fett kind of feels more like an older Jango Fett than an older Boba Fett.
Yeah, somebody did say that. I can't remember who now. But it's something that's just occurred to me is that the Boba Fett of Mando Season 2 and Book of Boba, they're not consistent.
No.
When Boba returned, was it episode 6?
Yeah, I think it was.
Of Season 2?
Yeah.
Oh, absolutely.
Mind-blowing.
I remember my old man saying, he went, good, this is like, it felt a bit much for Disney Plus.
Yeah.
So the hype for what I was really, but then it wasn't that, he liked his baths and he liked his walks and talks. It was all, those two aren't consistent with each other, which didn't quite make sense. But I'm not one to dwell overly on, I'm not one of these to keep sitting around going, oh, I don't. But it was, I said at the time of those four, it was just terribly in the middle.
Yeah.
And we were ready to move on really quickly.
And also with the show, like Star Wars, where there's going to be ancillary material like books and comics, and that they can go back and drop an episode in if they want, and there's opportunities for them to expand the storytelling or define the storytelling. That, let's say they sat down and thought, like we've just said, it feels like there's a tonal inconsistency there, that they could drop some sort of project in to go, well, actually, and explain it. A whole left in Star Wars storytelling isn't a whole left in storytelling for most of the shows, because that somebody will go, there's a gap there, there's a story we can fill in there, and they'll explain why a character may do this or do that.
Yeah.
So it's not, what I'm saying is there's not the panic stations that there might be with another franchise.
No, it's not, is there? But again, I have to remind myself sometimes that we are in the Disney era of deadlines. So I wonder if the guys were told, John and Dave were told, you can carry on with Mando, but we need something for Christmas 21. You need to go. I just can't. No one's been able to crack. It's one of the biggest mysteries. Yeah. When Mando entered, like you say, was that plucked from season 3, or? But what I can gather, we've got 8 episodes for season 3 ready, so it doesn't quite add up. But I thought that 10. On a positive note, you could tell he poured his heart and his soul into that. Really, he really, really did. And what they're doing with the de-aging with Luke, and to keep on bringing, which I'm all for, by the way. I'm not a person who enjoys recasting. Yeah. People have to matter. Yeah. So I was dead against Carrie being recast in 9. I was quite happy with what they did. I thought they did a delicate job of that. But I like the fact that it's still Mark, although they are boxed in a corner because now they have to stick with Mark.
Yes.
Because people have to matter, and we're seeing Luke now in his. This is what it's not fan service. It's just because we know these characters as good as the professionals, because we've lived them.
And that's a great point. And it does get misconstrued sometimes as fans, not gatekeeping, but because you follow and read and absorb these characters, and also sort of live with them beyond the material that they come from. You're thinking about them all the time. You're chewing over what they do. That a lot of these writers are kind of coming in and sitting down for their first interview with Variety, going, I've been a Star Wars fan since I was 10 years old, and they give the whole Pat storyline of, I had all the toys and saw all the films and yada yada. Not a surprise when it's a cultural zeitgeist explosion like Star Wars that people are aware of it, but that they then pick the bones of the character and they'll drill into a character coming from a different way. We're getting it with Andor, like, not Luke, but Tony Gilroy's coming at characters from a completely different perspective that other writers might do, but by the same token, they're presenting them in a way that, okay, we don't want everything to be pat and obvious and straight down the line, but sometimes.
This is Susanna Malik from Mandalorian and Boba Fett, and this is Fantha Tracks. Is it Fantha Tracks? I'm blind. I couldn't read it. Fantha.
I'm still going to use that.
Are you? Then use it. Even like this dumb broad can't speak English.
I always thought this was an interesting point. See what you think. Because I was fascinated by it when she said it. Lisa Kudrow of Phoebe and Friends, she said she never wanted it to come back, and she never does want it to come back. And the audience waited with bated breath, and somebody said, well, why not? She said, because something would have to go wrong for there to be a story. Yeah. And I want it to be kept as it was, which I thought was, it's a pretty throwaway comment, but you can apply that to anywhere, and it has to be. So if you think with Boba, it would be fun, and this is me sort of, I suppose, defending the show now, is because it would be fun to see him going around and smashing heads and whatnot. Yeah. But where's the drama? So I understood it, but I just don't think the execution.
Yeah.
I think the intent was there, but the execution wasn't quite just there.
And also, it was a bit of... I liked the logic of him getting out of the Sarlacc pit. If Darth Maul can come back from being chopped in half, and literally anybody can come back, so there was no issue with that. And Marvel did it in the comics in '84, and, you know, we've had this persistent storyline, and he came back in the EU and all of that. Fine. Never a problem with that. The thought that what happened to Boba, to the degree that it did, it was almost like... And I can say this... being married to somebody who's been through it, it was like surviving a cancer. It was like post-traumatic health scare.
That's
level
an interesting
of
take,
you know, and psychologically, it's not just the physical thing which he clearly managed to get over. It clearly slowed him down. It aged him. It took it out of him.
Yeah.
But it's also the mental thing, and it isn't until the very end of that final episode, which again was tonally so different to the 2 episodes we'd got before, but nevertheless. You know, he's like, I don't think this life's for me. And that came off like a throwaway line, but I think maybe they've left the door open. Maybe not next year, but I can see in the future that they might want to go back and do something else.
Yeah, and of course, being the villain comes at a cost, because he was orphaned. He saw his dad decapitated. He'd got no family, no tribe. Much like him and Han, that was the fascinating thing with him and Han, sorry. Yeah. They were because they were both orphans together, really, and no wonder he wants a tribe. No wonder he was so taken with this with the Tuscans. They
was beautifully done as well. Wasn't it?
It was really delicate. I thought it was really well done. All that, and you really did feel it when they were slaughtered. Yeah, you really did.
Yeah. So Book of Boba, as you say, mixed bag, but ultimately glad we got it.
Yeah, absolutely. I think so. Even if just to see the interactions with him and Mando, really, and to see him try to be the kind of new kingpin of Tatooine. But again, there was just odd stuff he's on about the water, and you know, time matters. We're given precious minutes, aren't we? I thought, do we really need to know about the problems with water? You know, but it was just. No, I didn't walk. I didn't finish it going, ooh.
Yeah.
But
that's 6 weeks. I'll never get back.
I didn't feel like that at all.
Yeah. Next series that came out, Obi-Wan Kenobi. Now we've been thinking about this forever. You're a prequel kid, so we've been thinking about this show forever. We've wanted Ewan to come back. Yeah. It's been on the cards for a long time. It was announced, I think, at D23 a couple of years ago.
2019.
So we've known it's coming. It finally arrives. Again, what were your sort of gut feelings when that rolled out?
Well, the hype, this was the one project that this had to happen. I'd have banged on the door. I was 8 with The Phantom Menace, grew up with the prequel, so Obi, because he's the one consistent actor as well. Obviously, we lost Liam in episode 1, and then Hayden comes in. So Ewan McGregor's Obi-Wan was sort of my Luke, in a sense. So the excitement, I couldn't sleep. I had something to do on the morning, so I couldn't watch it at 8 o'clock. Yeah. But it was the same level of buzz for me as The Force Awakens, because we were all excited for that. I loved it. Yeah. I know this seems to be, generally people seem to have liked it and have a couple of gripes here and there, but I thought, in terms of elevating the character, because my concern, again, I keep going back to cynical things, but my concern was that they were going to pull a Luke in 8. Yeah. Because I was so heartbroken by what happened, and I thought, oh my God, please. But I thought that McGregor's performance was some of the best acting we've really seen in Star Wars.
And I think it's because Star Wars is, it's a mix. It's a constant in entertainment, in people's lives. It's there and locked, and it's not going away. And we're interested, whatever's going to be coming out, whether it's animation, live action movies, whatever. With Obi-Wan Kenobi, here we sit in December 2022, having watched Andor, which we'll get to in a bit, and it makes you perhaps look back at Book of Boba and Obi-Wan Kenobi in a slightly different way, which is fine because every subsequent project makes you look back at previous things in a different way. But when Obi-Wan Kenobi came out, the impact for you, coming from your perspective, was
huge.
Immediate. Yeah.
I said to somebody who's a few years old, I said, this for me and for my generation of 90s kids, this was if maybe Mark or Harrison came back in the late 80s to do a show. So this was the one that I was really gunning for the whole time. And I thought that it really serves well as a sequel to the prequels.
Yes.
In terms of the look.
More than a prequel to the OT.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And it really elevates, especially towards the end.
Yeah.
Because I know there were some concerns about, is it going to retcon this or that?
Yeah.
But not only did we get this fascinating character portrayal. By the way, I always thought that a Luke Last Jedi storyline would have served Obi-Wan quite well.
Yeah.
You know, this complete tragedy. There was so many. You're probably going to have to stop me with Obi-Wan. The symmetry between him and Leia.
Yeah.
So he's the reluctant teacher.
Yeah.
With her, he's a bit. Oh God, stop running! Can you stand still?
Yeah.
And then it was such a delicate relationship.
Yeah.
I didn't mind that it wasn't Luke.
No.
I think if it would have been Luke, there would have been more story issues.
And don't you think that would exactly that? It would have been the most obvious thing, because we've imagined, and a lot of fans didn't like Obi-Wan Kenobi because in their mind it completely went against what had been said before. To me, it didn't. The fact that they had the fight, Vader and Obi-Wan in that particular setting didn't matter, because Obi-Wan, all Obi-Wan or Vader ever said was, we meet again at last. It was it's a long time since we've met. Well, this is 10 years before.
Yeah.
That was 20 years before. It's still a long time. The earlier films had a beautiful way of laying out a lot of information quite sparsely, but not being so definitive. Vader didn't say, it's 19 and a half years since we last met. It doesn't give you that definitive time span. It's just vague enough that the writers can look in and go, well, actually, there's something there that we can drop in. So I didn't feel that there was too much that was contradicted. You pick up Obi-Wan, he's kind of battered and defeated, but not. It's kind of explaining the film that he feels like or the show, that he feels kind of deflated, defeated. He's kind of watching Luke from a distance, but he can't get too close because of Owen. And there's a lot of things that are contriving to make him feel down. He's trying to commune with Qui-Gon still, and it ain't working.
Mm-hmm.
But you work your way through the series to the end where you're thinking he's had a proper refresh. It's a zap of energy. He's got off planet for a start, which is probably a great fillip for him. He's done something of significance in relation to Leia. He's reunited with Bail, and he's there to help if needed, which we know from A New Hope that was how it was. I just think all of it gave him the energy to get through the next 10 years, because we're still 10 years from A New Hope.
I think so. And it was I think what a few elements that get overlooked are some really wonderful, emotive story. One of my favourite moments was the final duel, and Obi or Ben he's trapped under the rocks, and we zoom in, and he's hearing the voices of the past, and Anakin and Palpatine and Yoda. But then, what does he remember? He has flashes of Luke and Leia, so he finds his strength through the children.
Yeah.
And that's gorgeous storytelling, that is. That's what gives him his A New Hope.
Yeah.
And then and I thought that all that was so delicately done, really.
And also, I think when you think about it, when you get to the OT and Yoda and Ben are very much putting their efforts on Luke and the expectation on Luke and the pressure on Luke, I think one thing that Obi-Wan serves is to kind of show you that we know down the line Leia will have her Force abilities, but I'm assuming, and it's probably not been drilled into too deeply, but Yoda and Ben, would know, and at that point, that Luke's the one that's going to present with the Force powers initially.
Yeah.
But he's not anywhere near as strong a personality as Leia. So Leia's path is set in politics, in doing the Mothma thing almost. Being out there and seen and doing what she does.
Yeah.
And she's it's a different time, but you could kind of, and we've got season 2 of Andor to come, so we'll see how brave Mothma becomes. We know that that's in her destiny, but Leia is just so Bolshevian full on that it makes sense to put the pressure on Luke. You're our only hope.
Yeah.
Well, there is another as a fallback position, kind of, and Luke knows that in time, but they're cultivating Luke, aren't they?
Yeah, absolutely.
Because Leia's got this other destiny that you've kind of seen starting Obi-Wan.
I agree, and one moment that's really been, I don't know if you've done it, really recommend watching Obi-Wan, then go and do A New Hope. One moment that's really elevated, I mean, it all works out wonderfully, doesn't it? Lucas planned it, is when, now having seen Obi-Wan, on the Death Star, when Han, Chewie, and they're running towards the Falcon, and Luke and Leia are there, and Ben's fighting Vader, and he looks and he sees Luke and Leia reunited. That grin that Alec does takes on a whole new meaning now. It's almost this relief of, my job is done.
I can
now.
lay my saber down now.
It's accomplished. The twins are back together. They really, really are. And again, having it was just so gorgeous, really, how Ewan played it, the writing with Leia, and we haven't even talked about Vader.
No.
If there's one thing that Disney have done right, is that we're in a golden age of Vader. He was handled really well in Rogue One, and I thought that Hayden did I don't know how much he was in I've got a bit confused. I've read conflicting things how much he was in the suit. But I thought Vader was spot on in Kenobi.
And it's interesting in that Book of Boba Fett wasn't constructed or required to be real deep, thoughtful, intertwined into the core fibres of the saga in the way that Obi-Wan was and Andor was. So you've kind of had an elevation of importance in the terms of how important it is to the wider story. Boba Fett's a peripheral character at the best of times. He's clearly more important in the prequel trilogy, but this is after the OT, so this is another time. All that's happened and done, and you're finding out about a beloved, fan-loved character, but it's not massively at this point integral to the fate of the galaxy. What happens in Obi-Wan is what happens in Andor really is. True. So there feels like there's a grade of, do you know what I mean?
Absolutely.
It's the depth of it.
Yeah, you really do. And I thought that, so contrasting Book of Boba with Obi-Wan, the flashbacks in Obi-Wan in episode 5, that's how you do a good flashback.
Yeah.
That with them training in the temple.
Did you, just to intersect, did you think that was a flashback or a memory? Because I've had my thoughts on it.
Okay.
I think it was there more Obi-Wan remembering the moment. The reason I say that is that they didn't go overly crazy on the de-aging. It's your mind's eye. When you're remembering stuff from your past, you don't see it. If you're remembering something you did as a 7-year-old kid, you don't see yourself as, I can't even picture myself as a 7-year-old kid. So you kind of see it through your eyes, but you don't see it as it was.
Maybe they were both remembering at the same time.
Yes. Because
they were so... I always wondered if they were some vague connection of a dyad, Obi-Wan and Anakin, because but that's true, that is, you're right, you did get a sense that they were both, it was leading towards this moment of fate again, and they were both remembering the same lesson or the same teaching or even the same failure, because it's okay for people to fail, as long as they, failure should reform you, not define you, which is what I think Obi-Wan did.
And Anakin, the mask cracked. The other side, as you saw in Rebels, just beautifully done.
And what I love about that is that Obi-Wan did one side, Ahsoka did the other, but the only person who could reach him was Luke.
Yes,
was the love of the son.
To get to take the mask off altogether.
Yeah, absolutely.
So it is way more thought through than people think.
Yeah,
and I think with the original trilogy especially, there's a lot of serendipity, a lot of things that kind of hang together almost by chance. And I think us as fans and not just us, but all fans who sort of think deeply about it have kind of built up certain elements that if you just read them blankly on a piece of paper don't have the same depth if you give them thought, if you think of it in collection or connection to other things. And so Star Wars is still the film of all films that people still think about 40 plus years on.
True.
And it ain't gone away. You're always going to go back to A New Hope. Everything in Andor is everything in Obi-Wan, for goodness sake. It's all building towards the end of A New Hope and the Death Star blowing up to a large degree. That is definitely a big chapter. That's why the calendar for Star Wars is BBY, ABY before you have in, after you have in.
Yeah, I didn't like it when they changed it to Star Killer. Didn't they try?
They tried,
but it didn't
in one
stick.
book. No, that's never going to take.
No,
that's never going to take.
I thought you'd have to stop me with Obi-Wan, honestly.
For everything in one location, daily news, reviews, interviews, podcasts, video and social media feeds, bookmark FanthaTracks.com for Star Wars news 24/7, 365.
did you make to the theory that each episode was 1 to 6? So in chapter 1 of Obi-Wan, it's the Phantom Menace.
Right.
You have a child, you have Leia, and then you have the call to adventure with Obi-Wan. In episode 2, you've got the kind of Coruscant type world. Was it Mapusa?
Yeah.
Yeah. And then in 3, you have a duel. Dayu, sorry. You have a duel by fire.
Yeah.
Once again, so with when Vader burns Obi-Wan, and you then obviously that relates back to Sith. Episode 4 is the rescue.
Yeah.
So and then chapter 5 there was the reveal.
Yeah.
So we had the reveal about. I know some of these are probably reaching a bit. But then episode 6, obviously, you have the Duel of the Fates. What did you make? Did you think that was deliberate? Or?
You know, I'd not heard that theory before, but now you say it, that there is some. I think there could be something in that.
Because I didn't really get. I thought, that's interesting. And then the one that got me was chapter 4. Was the Leia in the cell once again. And I went back and I went, oh yeah, it's each.
Yeah.
And again, some of them are. Then it obviously doesn't follow it.
Yeah.
Pattern by pattern, and kind of that was it. And then chapter 5, obviously, it leads on that bit of a downer, doesn't it?
Yeah.
As we know, much like Empire.
There's probably something in that because High Republic, just going off on a tangent. High Republic, you know, phase 1, phase 2, phase 3. Phase 1 is the OT. Phase 2 is this prequel trilogy. They're going back 150 years. Phase 3 will be following on from phase 1, and they said, "Oh yeah, we totally did that because that's what George did," sort of thing. You know, of course, George never got to make 7, 8, and 9. His ideas are out there, but you know they never did that. But nevertheless, that was kind of their logic. So, and I think it kind of comes into that beautiful ring theory thing that was really big a few years ago.
Yeah.
You know, and if they can not contrive, that's a bit too divisive a phrase, but you know what I mean. If they can kind of construct a sort of a theory, a sort of a cyclical thing, without giving the farm away. Yeah. It's a nice nod. At the very least, it's a nice nod to what Lucas did, isn't it?
I agree. The one that's just come to me as well was. Chapter 6 of Obi, again, you've got the Force spirit that arrives at the very end with Liam, and obviously we know about Endor. So I think I quite like that. The little romantic.
I can see that. I've not heard that, but I can totally see that.
Okay, now. I quite like that
That's
one.
Clever.
I liked it.
We finished the season, or rather, we finished the year with Andor.
Yeah.
We've had 12 episodes of that show. 3 episodes landed on one day, thankfully, because it was a slow start, and just built and built and built. Fandom was mixed. I think a lot got on board by the time it had finished and could see where this was going, the importance, the heft of it, the more mature nature, even though it's not an adult show, but it's got a more mature tone to it. What did you make of Andor as a whole, now that it's done and wrapped and we're now waiting for season 2?
Again, it's a bit... It was 50% some of the best quality that we've ever seen, and then 50%, much like oddly different of opinion, but much like things annoyed people in Obi-Wan. I'm quite I can't think of a word to use, but I don't know whether I could say it on this, but when they swore early on in Andor, it brought me out of it completely. I didn't like it. No. I don't want it. No. And then there were elements like that. So I know obviously there was one episode as they were building towards the heist in the Scottish Highlands, as they were preparing, and I watched it, and the acting was good and the writing was good, but there was no Star Wars in there.
Yeah.
And then on the flip side of that, you get to the episode with the eye.
Yeah.
Oh my goodness me, that was absolutely stunning. That shot of the gorgeous.
One thing that I liked about Andor that a lot of shows promise but don't deliver on was it's the old wrestling logic. I'm a wrestling fan, and wrestling psychology is you build and build and build towards the payoff. There's always got to be a payoff to the storyline, and there's always storylines in wrestling, and it's like that in Star Wars. And sometimes the payoff is a little bit lame or a little bit expected and not so satisfying. I think with Andor they built towards payoffs in those chunks. They broke it down into little chunks, and the eye was totally a payoff. It was totally they delivered on what they promised in those preceding episodes. And we mentioned it. I mentioned it to Mark on Making Tracks about how weirdly Kathleen Kennedy not long ago had said we kind of want to get away from trilogies. We don't want to be beholden to the logic of a trilogy. And then we know season 2 is 4 trilogies of episodes, and this was 3 trilogies, and then they dropped a few other episodes to sort of make it up into the 12. Do you know what I'm getting?
Yeah, absolutely.
You don't want to fall into a trope, but nevertheless,
they had done it.
certainly does work, doesn't it?
And the one way out, all that.
Yeah.
That again, it took every now and again. It took a bit of time to get there.
Yeah.
But all the payoffs. But some of the, Luthen. It turned out he's one of the most fascinating new characters to come out. And again, you have an actor like Skarsgård's caliber. That was absolutely. But they were just odd. I mean, I don't know. After the 14th cereal eating scene, I thought, oh God, I know. Okay, he likes next.
But don't you think there's I like this. There's divisive, and being divisive is a tricky subject in Star Wars because we as we know, 8 was kind of constructed to be divisive by design. Yeah. And it kind of worked. It overexceeded its limits in that
a tad,
just a bit. But I think with this, you've got a character like Cyril, who some people love him. I know people who think that's the most fascinating character, and I think season 2 is going to be a real banner season for that character. Yeah. And other people who couldn't see the point of him, and you get to the end of. I mean, for me, I think when they all end up on Ferrix in the final episode, and it's beautiful the way it's worked that everybody's there, and it really is like everybody's there. Yeah. And Cyril sees what he sees. The guy that's making up his nice smart uniform because he's all about order and presentation and doing the right thing, and sees the order of the Empire literally flushed down the toilet because the funeral starts 2 hours early and they just couldn't cope with it. It was fascinating to the nth degree, the detail of production, the quality of presentation, the visuals uniformly good. But like you said, the performance is Skarsgård.
Oh God,
and Fiona Shaw.
Mon Mothma.
Yeah,
we mentioned this last night, didn't we? I'd have quite happily had a
show about her.
Yeah, Mon Mothma, political drama. One of the writers, weren't they from House of Cards?
Yep.
So they know that kind of genre. I'd have quite that. Those were some of the most exciting. Nothing happened.
No,
it was just tantalising to see them do the whole facade of smart, and then but it was just. What a gift for her! You're cast with Lucas in Sith. You end up on the cutting room floor. You come back in Rogue One, which I thought was a really nice, not fan service cameo. It needed her there, and then you come back and you're able to do this. It was amazing.
And Tony Gilroy said, when he started writing it, and I think even I may have to go back and reread the interview, but my memory is him saying they'd started filming it, and he didn't realise what a powerhouse actress she was, and so he's like, I can give maybe he's referring to season 2, I can give this actress anything. I can literally throw the book at this woman and she's going to be able to perform to it,
absolutely
react to it. For a writer to know that you can give her anything must be so liberating.
It's a gift, isn't it? When you can just, like you say, completely trust and know that it's going to happen like that. But the production values on this show, if every Star Wars show had that, again, a couple of, I'm not completely goggly-eyed, but a couple of times with Obi-Wan, there were obviously some budget issues, weren't there? But if every show had that, oh my goodness me, we'd be flying, wouldn't we? Then you might go, well, actually, do we need films?
Well, yeah.
But we're not there yet.
But we talked about it on stage yesterday when we talked to some of the guys from Andor, and I spoke to one of the fellas from Rogue One as well, which will be coming on Fantha Tracks Radio soon. And the mix between, for example, stagecraft, which is still relatively new, and building just these monster sets like Ferrix, which they basically just built. They just built Galaxy's Edge in Buckinghamshire, didn't they, essentially? And like Stephen said, why didn't they just keep it open as a tourist attraction? Yeah. Who wouldn't want to go and see that? I know there was issues with the rights to keep the land there and the times they'd worked out. It's unfortunate, but nevertheless, when you've got stuff like that, it must. I don't know. You've got to pick your battles, haven't you? You've got to pick the right tool for the right job. So stagecraft works for some things and doesn't work for others. And you look at Andor and think, would, for example, Ewan loved making Kenobi because he literally is 20 minutes drive home every day. Great for him. Young family, blah, blah, blah. That worked wonderful. You accommodate the actors where you can. Nevertheless, you come back to the UK. Okay, they travel all around the UK to film stuff for Andor. You see the final results of Andor. I'm just thinking this in the moment. I'd love to know, for example, what Ewan McGregor thinks of Andor, and he looks at that and goes, "Good grief, look at that."
Hello, I'm Dennis Lawson, and you're listening to Fantha Tracks.
When we went up to see him at Edinburgh Comic Con, he'd said that he hadn't watched Andor yet because he knew a lot of the crew.
Yeah.
So he was saving to binge them. But like you say, does he then go, this would have been a lot.
When we do season 2.
Yeah. Which I think is... we mentioned this last night, and this isn't my terminology, but I was totally on board with the volume.
Yeah.
Because it was George's vision.
Totally.
Right in the attic.
Yeah.
Shoot in the garage.
Grady Ranch.
Edit in the basement.
Yeah.
It's literally it. And with Mando, I see why they did it. This was the first live-action show. We've got to be careful of budget. Is it going to work? And it did feel... I remember watching... Was it the Disney Gallery show?
Yes.
Yeah. And I paused it a couple of times because you can't tell sometimes where the volume... And that's genius.
Yeah.
But again, maybe with OB a couple of times, but was a lot of the budget on Ewan getting... he's an A-lister. Was it on the effects? You've got to have this big deal. So I understood, and again with Andor, getting Forrest Whitaker back would have been but it felt like a HBO show, which I think was both a blessing and a curse because as I said, the swearing. No, I'm fine, thanks.
Yeah,
not for me.
Not keen on that.
I know some people are all. It doesn't bother them. But
Well, it's the Marva thing, isn't it? When she filmed the scene, instead of saying "fight ferrets," she said something else beginning with their ferrets. And I know some people who are actually on the set were like, "Oh, they should have left it in." And I'm not. No, I'm sorry.
The fact that was touted has me concerned.
Big time.
It's
a cheap pop.
Yeah.
It's cheap. They did it on Star Trek, but I can kind of forgive it on Star Trek because Star Trek is us in the future. This is Star Wars a long time ago and a long way away, and there's no place for that word when there's a dozen Star Wars fake like Dank Ferrick or whatever that they can throw in instead and have. It's the way you say it. Half these words, it's the way you say it. If you say a word with intent,
you don't need it. It doesn't need it. You hear, there's a reason why it's not in Star Wars. Is because a 5-year-old and an 85-year-old can both
watch it,
sit and it really took me out of it. I know I'm labouring on one point,
no.
but it really did get to me. And because there's a lot of. The accents didn't like the Scottish, and that was just fun. But
I'm going to ask you, as a fellow person from the same part of the world, did you spot the Brummie voice in
a good bit of?
Did you? I couldn't believe that. I interviewed
episode 10.
I think it was. It's the Prison Break one. I interviewed David Collins a couple of weeks ago, and after I wish I'd asked him on the show, and he might not have had a clue what I was talking about. But I messaged him after. I haven't had a reply yet, but I did say, "Can you find out who the Brummie guy was in the prison?" Because you can hear it. It's just like in Alien 3. The guy in Alien, he's coming this way, and he's really pissed off. And it was the same. Just hearing that, just took me out of the moment. But hearing it in Andor was like, I'm so pleased because I've heard, like you say, you've heard Scottish accents. Qui-Gon, Liam, we've heard Irish accents. We've heard all the accents now, and that's fine because it's a tool to delineate between regionally where people are from. I don't mind that. That guy's clearly not a Brummie. Liam's clearly not an Irish guy. It gets me sometimes when they'll have a character that, let's say they in Rebels, they'll have a character that is physically designed to look like he's from Japan. Let's pick a country, Japan. And then they'll pick a voice actor who's clearly got that accent that matches it. And then they'll give him a character name that clearly sounds like a Japanese character. That, to me, makes literally no sense.
Agreed.
Because that's not a Japanese guy in Star Wars. There's no requirement to do that. Cassian Andor is a name that could be attributed to anybody in Star Wars.
True.
The fact that it's Diego Luna using his own accent, which just sounds like the most natural thing in Star Wars now.
Absolutely.
Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, absolutely. That's a really good point.
They can really mix it up if they want to. There's no requirement to match a name sounding like an Earth name with a voice that matches what you would consider would match the face. Make it a melting pot.
Yeah, I agree absolutely. And it's not, again, it's just, we are but not products of the time. So with the original trilogy, it was, well, we've got these American actors and we've got these British actors. So that's it was cost. It
top
was
and bottom.
Yeah, that's all it literally was. So now you do get this real. Some of it with the Scottish, it did. It did raise a titter every now and again.
Oh, yeah.
But no, you would, because they'd be in a galaxy, you would have different inflection. I mean, I'm fascinated by accents anyway. Yeah. And it must be nice, I don't know, say you are you're a Scotsman, you go, oh, great, I'm in Star Wars.
That's
it must be good.
But it goes right back to the original, as we come to the end of this podcast. It goes right back to the original when you listen to Star Wars. Star Wars and Empire, let's say, Star Wars and Empire. And it's Han and Han, Leia and Leia, Boba and Boba.
Yeah.
And like, when people have corrected me for saying Boba Fett instead of Boba Fett.
What do you say for Han?
Boba Fett.
Do you say Han or Han? I say Han,
Yeah. But a lot of people say Han. Leia said Han. Other people say Han.
Yeah.
Boba. Harrison Ford says Boba Fett, Boba Fett. It's right there in the film. So there's so many examples. Executor. You know, you bought the Executor box set earlier.
Yeah.
It's in. If you're in America, it's Executor.
Yeah.
Which makes literally no sense to me, because an executor hands out a will, an executor's going to chop your freaking head off. That, you know, it's the intent of the word, and also how we say it. I don't think there's any wrong way to say it. It's an AT-AT.
Absolutely.
Why would you say 80-80? The words literally are at and at.
AT-AT?
Yeah.
I always thought it was me being common when I said stuff like Han and stuff like that. But it does seem to. But I quite like the.
But all this modern stuff now.
Yeah.
Opening the boundaries. I think Clone Wars did it really initially really well. Well, the Weequay always have like the weird Cockney accents.
Yeah.
Apart from Hondo, who sounds Italian, and then all the Twi'leks had the French accent, and they really did open it up in that sense. And Jar Jar's got a sort of an accent, not a specific Earth accent, but
I know what you mean.
They're trying to really mix it up, and it feels in the best sense now. It's coming home to roost. And it just really stood out to me in Andor in a really good way.
It did, yeah, I agree totally. It really, really did. Tales of the Jedi.
Yeah.
We had that I think they should have waited till maybe Christmas Day to release it, so it didn't get lost.
Weren't you disappointed it did kind of get lost in the mix, didn't it? It was like everyone was talking about it for 7 days. Yeah. It was forgotten about.
I thought it was fantastic.
Excellent. That 4th episode.
Yeah.
With Yaddle.
Oh, my goodness me.
To me, that's like top 3 Star Wars animation ever.
Yeah, absolutely. I agree totally.
The heft of it, the fact that it's actually McDiarmid doing the Emperor.
Yeah,
Corey Burton doing Dooku. It was just
Bryce Dallas Howard. She was Yaddle.
And just the music.
Yaddle or Yaddle?
Yeah, good question. Yoda or Yoda?
Yoda.
And being in that room, the works from the end of episode 2. That room where Sidious and Dooku have their meeting there. Just being in there, the way the whole thing played out was just that. That's a top. I mean, that's like top 3 of the year comfortably for me.
Oh, easy. It's such a shame it got lost in that. Release it at Christmas, have its own thing, and you could have. But I like it when, slight off tangent, but it relates. So Liam came back for Tales. What did he have, like 6, 7 lines?
If that.
But I like it because it shows people care.
Yes.
I don't, because we care so much, and it rules our life in a good way. Yeah. But I like it when people. It's like when he came back for Obi. He said, "No, I don't want anybody else. I don't want anybody else playing him. It's my character." I like that. Yeah. I want to know that it's special to you as well. Yeah. But the voice talent and the writing I thought it was. I like the symmetry between Dooku now.
Oh, man.
You can't look at Dooku the same way again, can you?
No.
He's not a political idealist, he's a murderer. Well, it turns out he is a slightly murderous.
Yes.
So I loved it. But again, shame that it got... This is the where we're in now. It is content after, Andor's finished. Well, don't cancel Disney Plus just yet, because Bad Batch is on...
January 4th, exactly, and March 1st is Season 3 Mando, and then we've got Ahsoka next year, and quite possibly Skeleton Crew at the back end of the year.
Is the Acolyte next Christmas, or is that 24?
I think Acolyte is 24. I could be wrong.
Oh, okay.
I mean, I know they're filming that way through. I'm pretty sure it's 24, because they're filming that right through the summer. Obviously, Andor Season 2 is 24 as well.
Yeah.
Maybe, who knows, we'll have some news on the film by then.
We wait with bated breath.
Thanks for joining me. It's been really fun.
I've really enjoyed it, mate. Thank you for having me.
We'll do this again.
Absolute pleasure. I'd love to. Thank you.
Thanks for listening to Making Tracks. If you want to be a part of the action and stay updated on all the latest Star Wars news, visit fanthatracks.com or check out the free Fantha Tracks app through the App Store to follow us on your mobile device. You can reach out to us and send in your listeners' questions by emailing radio@fanthatracks.com. Comment, like and share on any of our social media feeds at Fantha Tracks, and be sure to subscribe, leave a review, preferably a 5-star one, on Amazon Music, Audible, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Spotify, or your podcatcher or smart speaker of choice. And as always, thanks to James Semple for composing the Fantha Tracks intro, Adam O'Brien for our Making Tracks opening music, and Mark Daniel and Vanessa Marshall for our voiceovers. Remember, tune in to Good Morning Tatooine. It's live Sunday evenings at 9 o'clock UK, 4 p.m. Eastern, 1 p.m. Pacific on Facebook and YouTube. And check out our Fantha Tracks Radio Friday night rotation every Friday night at 7 p.m. UK time for new episodes of The Fantha from Down Under, Planet Leia, Desert Planet Discs, Start Your Engines, Collecting Tracks, Cannon Fodder, and special episodes of Making Tracks. And that's me done for this episode.
Coming up next on Fantha Tracks Radio, it's Collecting Tracks.